The Bucs were staring at a lost season halfway through 2023, and that was because, well, Baker Mayfield and the Bucs were staring at a lot of inconsistencies. They were losing some pretty winnable games, but they turned it around to win the NFC South once again in the last week of the regular season, and in the playoffs, they got further by one game, but nonetheless, it's still an accomplishment. They clipped the wings of the Philadelphia Eagles in their home playoff game in the wild card. And in the divisional game, they were in a nail-biter with the Lions. But unfortunately, they fell just short of making the NFC Championship game, and they lost to Detroit in that divisional game. So if you're Baker Mayfield and the Bucs, obviously there are a lot of things that need to be accomplished in the offseason if you want to reach your goal for the 2024 season. And that was repeat as division champions, keep your stranglehold on the South, and hope for a much deeper playoff run, like making the NFC Championship game. So doing that, there's going to require a lot of work for Tampa Bay, because looking at some of these offseason events for Tampa, there's a little bit of turnover, but also they managed to at least keep a lot of their guys. Like, for example, they re-signed quarterback Baker Mayfield. They re-signed Mike Evans. They also re-signed safety Antoine Winfield, and they managed to keep Lavonte David. So 4 key parts of that season, they're pretty much back. And that is a good thing for this Bucs team. But they did lose Baker Mayfield's offensive coordinator, Dave Canales, who went on to become the Panthers head coach. And they replaced him with Liam Cohen, the former University of Kentucky offensive coordinator. But he does have some brief familiarity with Baker during their brief time together with the LA Rams, when Baker was there for like a month, very late in the season. So looking at some of their other key offseason moves for the Bucs, I know they had a lot of free agents, a lot of free agents in the market, but honestly, when you look at it, they didn't really lose out on a lot, and that is a good thing. At least in my opinion. At least that's how I'm viewing it when I saw this. They had a lot, but they didn't lose a lot. So 2 key guys that they did lose, though, was Shaquille Barrett to the Miami Dolphins and linebacker Devin White to the Eagles. So it was a little curious choice why they let Devin White go, because I felt like he was an integral part of that front 7 alongside Lavonte David. So I'm a little curious why they let him go, but maybe he just didn't get the right amount of money that he was hoping for from Tampa Bay. So they did add a couple of guys to try and make up for those losses, like edge rusher Randy Gregory from the 49ers, and safety Jordan Whitehead, and corner Bryce Hall from the Jets. So trying to beef up a little that weak passing defense here and there. So they offensively, they also tried to get Baker Mayfield some help by getting Sterling Shepard from the Giants. And the draft is where they did their dirty work for the most part, by adding to that offensive line that really struggled in the interior, like getting a center, Brandon Graham from Duke. He's going to be a key contributor, but I'll talk about in a little bit. And defensively, they added Chris Braswell from Alabama, an edge rusher, and safety Tyke Smith from Georgia. So when you look at this Bucs team going into 2024, their offense, more specifically Baker Mayfield, they should be better protected. For as successful as Baker and the Bucs were last year, one of the biggest issues that they were having, and one of the reasons why they were having that bad stretch in the middle of the season, was protecting Baker Mayfield on key downs. He was getting sacked a lot, and he also was pressured into making some bad back-breaking mistakes, especially in the interior offensive line. So they addressed that in this offseason by drafting Graham Barton, which is a good choice. So he seems like a seamless choice to be the true successor to Ryan Jensen, who retired last offseason. And the only thing that they need to resolve is the left guard spot. That still needs to resolve in training camp and going into the preseason. But at least for now, the offensive line in the interior should be improved. It should be really improved. But what isn't improved yet is that passing defense. Like, I have some concerns there still. Corner Jamel Dean and safety Antoine Winfield, they're at least back, which is good because they're big key playmakers for that Bucs defense. But man, some of their offseason moves, it worries me. It worries me. Like trading away Carlton Davis to the Lions, and trying to hope that their young depth corners or like Bryce Hall can fill in the gap. That worries me a little bit. I mean, I'm not saying Bryce Hall is a bad player, but I just hope that someone can replace Carlton Davis just like that and be a key contributing playmaker. Otherwise, this passing defense is going to struggle again, giving up key downs, giving up big plays like it did last year. Meanwhile, they did draft safety Tyke Smith and bringing back Jordan Whitehead, but again, just like with the corners, remains to be seen if either can be a difference maker. Looking at some of their key games going into the 2024 season, it starts at home against the Washington Commanders, seeing whether this new, improved, both of these teams, whether these improved teams can seriously make a dent at each other. And then you travel to Detroit in week 2 to take on the Lions in an NFC divisional rematch from last year. That should be a fun one. And then 2 weeks later, you take on the Philadelphia Eagles in a rematch of that NFC wildcard game where the Bucs whooped their ass. And then a little bit of a gauntlet, a double game gauntlet between for the Bucs, going to Atlanta and going to New Orleans, key divisional games that are going to matter for their division title defense. So obviously the big question I have for the Tampa Bay Bucs going into this season is centered around Baker Mayfield. How is he going to follow up this comeback like 2023 with, whatever we're expecting in 2024? Because, he's coming off a career year after a mixed first 4 years in Cleveland where he got drafted, and then he gets traded to Carolina, and then the Rams, and then he gets waived in the middle of 2022, and then he comes on to the Rams very late in the season off waivers, very, very inconsistent in that last month, and then he signs on with the Bucs, and then boom, resurgence. So should be interesting now that teams are more familiar with how Mayfield operates. Mayfield signs a kind of big fat contract, so it's going to be on him to exceed expectations once more in 2024. He's got to live up to that now. So the Bucs still made some noticeable upgrades, despite some noticeable holes on their roster. It gives them a crack at competing with the Saints and the Falcons for this division. I know people were doubting the Bucs, after the loss to the Lions, and like saying, this was their only avenue this season. But they're still in the weak division after all. So their schedule is harder. It's going to be tougher than last year, but that's the thing when you have a first place schedule now. That's what happens when you're division champions for the last 4 years. And we have to see how Baker Mayfield's going to do with yet another new coordinator. But at least with this one, he has brief history with. And I'll say this, as long as they stay healthy and they keep pace with their division, especially with the Saints and with the Falcons, they have a really good chance to repeat as NFC South Champions for a 5th time. 5th, 4th, I've been saying 4th, but it's 2020, 2021, 2022, 5-time. 5-time. They'll be a 5-time division champion if they could do that in 2024. So I think they got a real good shot of doing that this year, as long as they stay healthy and they can play pretty well.